I'm Imani, a name that means faith in Swahili, and at 28, I carried a lot of it in my heart. I had moved to New York City 3 years ago, fresh out of college, with a burning desire to make my mark. The city's relentless energy mirrored my own ambition, and I felt an immediate connection to its vibrant pulse. My dream was to break into the competitive world of advertising, a field where creativity met strategy. I envisioned crafting campaigns that weren't just visually stunning but also deeply impactful, connecting with people on a genuine level. It felt like the perfect arena for my passion and drive. After countless applications and nerve-wracking interviews, I landed a junior account executive position. It was at Sterling & Finch, a mid-sized agency known for its innovative campaigns and a seemingly progressive outlook. I remember the thrill of receiving that acceptance call, a moment of pure exhilaration. Stepping into the bustling office for the first time, I felt a mix of awe and determination. The open-plan space hummed with activity, designers sketching, writers brainstorming, and account managers on calls. It was everything I had imagined, a dynamic environment where ideas flowed freely. I quickly immersed myself in the agency's culture, eager to learn and contribute. My colleagues seemed friendly, the work was challenging, and I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't experienced before. This was it, I thought, my chance to truly shine. My initial tasks involved supporting senior account managers, preparing presentations, and conducting market research. I approached every assignment with meticulous care, determined to prove my capabilities. I wanted to be indispensable, to show them I was more than just a new hire. I often stayed late, poring over industry reports and consumer insights, trying to anticipate client needs. My goal was to always be one step ahead, to bring fresh perspectives to the table. I believed that hard work and dedication would inevitably lead to recognition. There was a palpable buzz in the office, a feeling that we were all part of something significant. I loved the collaborative spirit, the way different teams came together to solve complex problems. It felt like a family, albeit a very fast-paced and demanding one. I quickly developed a reputation for my strong work ethic and keen eye for detail. Clients appreciated my proactive communication and ability to anticipate their questions. My direct manager, Sarah, often praised my initiative and told me I was a valuable asset to the team. I was particularly drawn to projects that aimed for social impact, campaigns that could genuinely make a difference. I believed advertising had the power to shape perceptions and drive positive change. This was more than just selling products. It was about telling stories. My background, growing up in a diverse neighborhood, gave me a unique perspective on consumer behavior. I understood nuances that others sometimes missed, especially when it came to reaching diverse audiences. I saw this as my unique strength, my competitive edge. I started taking on more responsibility, leading smaller client accounts and presenting directly to clients. The trust placed in me fueled my confidence, and I embraced every new challenge. I was building my portfolio, one successful campaign at a time. The long hours never bothered me. I was living my dream in the greatest city in the world. Every sunrise over the Manhattan skyline felt like a personal invitation to conquer new heights. I was young, ambitious, and ready for anything. I often called my parents, sharing my triumphs and the exciting pace of my life. They were incredibly proud, reminding me to stay grounded and true to myself. Their support was my anchor in this whirlwind of a city. Looking back, those early days were filled with an unshakable optimism. I believed in meritocracy, in the idea that hard work would always be rewarded. I had yet to fully grasp the invisible barriers that sometimes existed, even in the most seemingly progressive environments. As the months turned into a year, I noticed subtle shifts in the office dynamics. While I continued to excel and receive positive feedback, there were moments that felt off. It was nothing overt, just a feeling, a slight chill in the air. I was often the only Black woman in leadership meetings, a fact that became increasingly apparent. Sometimes, my ideas, when voiced, would be met with polite nods, only to be enthusiastically reiterated by a male colleague minutes later. It was frustrating, but I dismissed it as coincidence. There were instances where I felt my contributions were minimized or attributed to others. A successful strategy one had spearheaded might be praised, but the credit would often be shared broadly, while others' individual achievements were highlighted. It was a quiet erasure. I started to observe how different colleagues were treated, how opportunities were presented. Certain individuals seemed to have an easier path, more direct access to senior leadership, and more high-profile assignments. It felt like an unspoken hierarchy. Social gatherings outside of work often felt less inclusive. While I was always invited, I sometimes felt like an observer rather than a participant in the easy camaraderie. Conversations would shift, or inside jokes would be shared that I couldn't quite grasp. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself that perhaps I was overthinking things, that it was just the nature of a large office. I focused harder on my work, believing that undeniable results would eventually break through any perceived barriers. Despite these subtle discomforts, I was still passionate about my work. I poured my energy into developing innovative campaigns, particularly those focused on diversity and inclusion. I believe these were areas where I could truly make a unique impact. I noticed that I was often assigned to projects targeting diverse demographics, which I welcomed. However, it sometimes felt like I was being pigeonholed, limited to a specific niche, rather than being seen as a versatile talent. My manager, Sarah, remained supportive, but even she seemed to navigate a delicate balance. She would advocate for me in certain situations, but there was a limit to how much she could push against the ingrained patterns of the agency. I began to question if my perception was skewed, if I was being overly sensitive. It's a common internal battle for many, wondering if the subtle slights are real or imagined. The gaslighting of systemic issues is often quiet and insidious. I found myself code-switching more often, adjusting my language and demeanor to fit in. I wanted to be seen as professional, competent, and non-threatening. It was an exhausting performance, a constant self-monitoring. The agency prided itself on its diverse client portfolio, yet its internal representation, especially at senior levels, told a different story. It was a stark contrast between external messaging and internal reality, a subtle hypocrisy. I started keeping a mental log of these incidents, not out of malice, but out of a need to validate my own experiences. It was a way to confirm that what I was feeling wasn't just paranoia, but a pattern emerging. I continued to deliver exceptional results, exceeding client expectations and bringing in new business. My performance reviews were consistently strong, filled with praise for my creativity and strategic thinking. I was undeniably a high performer. Yet, despite the accolades, there was a persistent feeling that something was holding me back. It was like running a race with an invisible weight, knowing you're fast, but never quite reaching the finish line with the same ease as others. My hard work paid off, and I was promoted to account manager, a significant step up. This meant leading my own team, managing larger budgets, and having more direct influence on campaign strategy. I was thrilled, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. I embraced my new responsibilities with enthusiasm, mentoring junior colleagues and fostering a collaborative environment within my team. I wanted to create the kind of inclusive space I sometimes wished I had experienced more consistently. One particular project, a national campaign for a major retail brand, became my focus. It was a massive undertaking, requiring innovative thinking and flawless execution. I poured my heart and soul into every aspect of it, from concept to launch. The campaign aimed to celebrate diverse beauty, a theme I felt deeply connected to. I pushed for authentic representation, ensuring that the models and narratives reflected the true spectrum of consumers. It was a challenging but incredibly rewarding endeavor. My team and I worked tirelessly, overcoming numerous obstacles and tight deadlines. We collaborated closely with the client, building a strong relationship based on trust and mutual respect. The energy was electric, and we knew we were creating something special. The campaign launched to critical acclaim, generating significant buzz and exceeding all performance metrics. Sales for the client soared, and the brand received widespread praise for its inclusive messaging. It was an undeniable success, a career highlight. The agency celebrated our achievement, and I received internal recognition for my leadership. There was talk of industry awards, and the retail brand specifically highlighted my role in their success. I felt a surge of pride, seeing my vision come to life. However, even amidst the celebration, the subtle patterns persisted. While my team was lauded, individual spotlights often seemed to gravitate towards my male counterparts, even those who had played less central roles. It was a familiar sting. I noticed that during client appreciation dinners, I was sometimes seated further down the table, or my contributions were briefly mentioned before the conversation moved on. It was a constant reminder of an unseen hierarchy. My ideas, once dismissed, were now being repackaged and presented by others as their own. It was a subtle form of intellectual theft, difficult to pinpoint but undeniably present. It chipped away at my sense of ownership. I started to feel an invisible ceiling above me, a barrier that seemed to rise just as I approached it. It wasn't about my competence. It was about something else, something unspoken but deeply ingrained in the agency's fabric. I observed how my white male colleagues were fast-tracked for certain opportunities, even if their experience was less extensive than mine. They were given the benefit of the doubt, while I felt I constantly had to overprove myself. The frustration began to build, a quiet simmer beneath the surface of my professional composure. I loved the work, but the constant need to fight for recognition, to justify my presence, was draining. It was an emotional tax. I started seeking out mentors outside the agency, other Black women in leadership roles. Their stories resonated deeply, confirming that my experiences were not isolated incidents but part of a larger systemic issue. Their wisdom became invaluable. Despite the growing discomfort, I remained committed to my work and my team. I knew that my success was not just for me, but for every young Black woman who aspired to break into this industry. I had to keep pushing forward. The news arrived with a flurry of excitement. Our retail campaign was nominated for a prestigious industry award, the Adweek Visionary Award, for its groundbreaking approach to diversity. It was one of the highest honors in our field. My name was prominently featured in the nomination, acknowledging my role as the lead strategist and creative director. The entire agency buzzed with anticipation, and everyone expected us to win. It felt like the culmination of years of hard work. The award ceremony was a black tie event, a glittering affair held at a grand ballroom in Midtown Manhattan. It was an opportunity for the industry's elite to gather, network, and celebrate excellence. Attending was an honor in itself. Our agency purchased a large table, and invitations were extended to the senior leadership team and key contributors to the nominated campaigns. I eagerly awaited my official invitation, envisioning the night and what it would mean for my career. Days passed, then a week, and my invitation never arrived. I saw colleagues discussing their outfits and travel plans, but my name was conspicuously absent from the guest list circulating internally. A knot formed in my stomach. I approached my manager, Sarah, cautiously, assuming there had been an oversight. "Sarah," I began, "I haven't received my invitation for the Adweek Awards. Is there a separate list for the campaign leads?" Sarah looked uncomfortable, her eyes darting away. "Imani," she said, her voice softer than usual. Mr. Harrison made the final decision on the guest list. He felt it was best to keep the table focused on executive leadership this year. Mr. Harrison was the CEO. My heart sank. But I was the lead on the nominated campaign. I countered, trying to keep my voice steady. "My name is on the nomination. It's standard for the lead to attend, especially for such a significant award." "I understand your disappointment, Imani," she replied, avoiding my gaze. But Mr. Harrison was very clear. He believes the agency's overall representation is more important at these events. It was a flimsy excuse, and we both knew it. The implication was clear. As the only Black woman who led a nominated campaign, I was being excluded. It wasn't an oversight. It was a deliberate decision, a blatant snub that cut deeper than any previous microaggression. The sting of the exclusion was immediate and profound. It wasn't just about missing a fancy dinner. It was about being denied recognition for my undeniable contribution, about being deemed unworthy of a seat at the table. I felt a wave of anger, followed by a crushing sense of betrayal. All my hard work, my dedication, my proven success, it meant nothing when faced with the unspoken biases that permeated the highest levels of the agency. I left Sarah's office, the vibrant hum of the agency now feeling like a mocking echo. I retreated to my desk, trying to process the raw injustice of it all. My colleagues, oblivious, continued their excited chatter about the upcoming gala. The next few days were a blur of forced smiles and internal turmoil. I continued my work, but a part of me felt numb, disconnected. The optimism I had arrived with had been replaced by a bitter disillusionment. I realized then that this wasn't just about me, It was about a pattern, a systemic issue that extended far beyond one award ceremony. My exclusion was a symptom of a larger problem, a quiet but pervasive form of discrimination. The days leading up to the awards ceremony were agonizing. Every conversation about the event felt like a fresh wound, a reminder of my deliberate exclusion. I felt a profound sense of isolation, despite being surrounded by people. I considered quitting, walking away from an agency that had so clearly devalued my contributions. The thought was tempting, a desperate urge to escape the pain and humiliation. But then, a different emotion began to stir: defiance. Why should I suffer in silence? Why should I let their prejudice define my worth? The anger that had simmered beneath the surface now began to ignite, transforming into a resolve to reclaim my narrative. I spent hours reflecting on my journey, from the hopeful young woman who arrived in New York to the accomplished professional I had become. My success was undeniable, built on merit and hard work, not on their validation. I thought about the countless times I had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. I thought about the subtle slights, the overlooked ideas, the constant need to prove my competence. This exclusion was the final straw. I knew that simply leaving wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't change anything for the next Black woman who walked through those doors, full of hope and ambition, only to face the same invisible barriers. I had to speak up. The fear was palpable. Speaking out against a powerful agency, against a CEO, could jeopardize my entire career. I could be blacklisted, labeled as difficult or ungrateful. The stakes were incredibly high, but the alternative, remaining silent and internalizing the injustice, felt even more suffocating. My voice, my story, had power. It was a power they had tried to silence, but I was determined to use it. I reached out to a trusted mentor, an older Black woman who had navigated similar challenges in her own career. She listened patiently, offering not just empathy, but also practical advice. "Your story matters, Imani," she told me, "and it's yours to tell." She encouraged me to document everything, to gather evidence of my contributions and the agency's patterns. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability and ensuring the truth was heard. I started writing, pouring out my feelings and experiences onto paper. It was cathartic, a way to process the pain and transform it into a coherent narrative. My personal story became a powerful tool. I decided not to attend the ceremony, of course, but I also decided not to let my absence be silent. I wanted my voice to be heard, not just within the agency, but beyond its walls. The idea of going public was terrifying, but also liberating. It was a step into the unknown, a leap of faith. But I knew, deep down, that it was the right thing to do, for myself and for others. This wasn't just about an award. It was about dignity, respect, and the fundamental right to be seen and valued. My journey of empowerment was truly beginning, not with a whisper, but with a growing roar. I felt a quiet strength settle within me, a resolve that transcended fear. I was ready to face the consequences, whatever they may be, because my integrity and my voice were worth fighting for. With a newfound resolve, my first step was to meticulously document my contributions to the award-nominated campaign. I gathered emails, project timelines, client testimonials, and performance reports. The evidence of my leadership was irrefutable. Next, I drafted a personal statement detailing my experience at Sterling and Finch, from the subtle microaggressions to the blatant exclusion from the award ceremony. I focused on facts, avoiding emotional outbursts, letting the narrative speak for itself. I shared my draft with my mentor, who helped me refine the language, ensuring it was clear, concise, and impactful. She advised me to frame it not just as a personal grievance, but as a systemic issue that needed to be addressed. I also discreetly reached out to a few trusted colleagues, people I had built genuine connections with. To my surprise, many of them expressed similar frustrations, having witnessed or experienced similar patterns of discrimination within the agency. One colleague, Mark, a senior art director, revealed that he had actively pushed for my inclusion on the guest list, only to be overruled by Mr. Harrison. He expressed his disgust at the agency's hypocrisy and offered his full support. Another, a junior copywriter named Chloe, admitted she had been inspired by my leadership and was disheartened by the way I was being treated. She offered to help in any way she could, even if it meant risking her own position. These unexpected allies were a lifeline, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. Their solidarity gave me immense courage and reinforced my belief that speaking out was the right path. My mentor then connected me with a journalist she knew, someone with a reputation for covering issues of diversity and inclusion in corporate environments. It was a long shot, but I knew I had to try. I sent the journalist my statement and supporting documentation, along with a brief, heartfelt email explaining why I felt compelled to share my story. I waited, holding my breath, unsure if it would even be read. The journalist responded within hours, expressing immediate interest. She wanted to hear my story directly, to understand the nuances and the impact it had on me. We scheduled a confidential video call for the following day. During our conversation, I spoke openly and honestly, sharing my hopes, my disappointments, and the pain of being overlooked. I emphasized that my intention was not to destroy the agency, but to spark a necessary conversation about equitable treatment. The journalist was empathetic and professional, asking probing questions that helped me articulate my experiences even more clearly. She understood the systemic nature of the issue, recognizing it as more than just a personal slight. She explained that my story resonated because it highlighted a pervasive problem in many industries, the performative diversity that often masked deeper ingrained biases. My experience was a powerful illustration of this hypocrisy. I felt a sense of relief after the call, a lightness I hadn't felt in weeks. The burden of silence had been lifted, and my story was now in the hands of someone who could amplify it. The decision to go public was terrifying, but it was also an act of self-preservation. By speaking my truth, I was reclaiming my power, refusing to let others define my worth or silence my voice. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but I was no longer walking it alone. With my allies and my truth by my side, I was ready for whatever came next. The Adweek Visionary Awards ceremony came and went without me. I spent that evening at home, not in bitterness, but in quiet anticipation. The next morning, the article hit. The headline was stark: Award-nominated Black executive excluded from ceremony by NYC ad agency CEO. The story, meticulously researched and sensitively written, laid bare my experience. It quoted me directly, detailing the exclusion and the agency's flimsy excuse. The article quickly went viral. Social media exploded with reactions, a mix of outrage, solidarity, and shared experiences. People from across the industry and beyond weighed in. My story resonated with so many who had faced similar discrimination. The agency's initial response was a terse, generic statement about their commitment to diversity, which only fueled more criticism. They tried to control the narrative, but it was too late. My story had already taken hold. Within hours, major news outlets picked up the story, interviewing diversity experts and industry veterans who condemned Sterling and Finch's actions. The agency, once seen as innovative, was now facing a public relations nightmare. My phone buzzed constantly with messages of support from former colleagues, friends, and complete strangers. It was overwhelming, but also incredibly validating. I felt a powerful wave of collective empathy. The backlash was swift and severe. Several clients, concerned about their brand image, began to pull their accounts or demand explanations. The agency's stock took a hit, and its reputation was in tatters. Internally, the atmosphere at Sterling and Finch became tense. Employees were divided, some defending the agency, others quietly expressing their support for me. The comfortable facade of collegiality had shattered. Mr. Harrison, the CEO, initially remained defiant, but the mounting pressure forced his hand. The agency's board of directors launched an internal investigation, and rumors of his imminent departure began to circulate. I was contacted by multiple media outlets for interviews, but I chose my appearances carefully, prioritizing platforms that would allow me to speak thoughtfully about systemic issues, not just personal grievances. I spoke about the importance of authentic diversity, not just tokenism. I advocated for transparent promotion processes and accountability for discriminatory practices. My voice, once silenced, was now amplified. The experience was emotionally draining, but also incredibly empowering. I was no longer just Imani, the account manager. I was Imani, the advocate, using my platform to push for real change. My allies within the agency, Mark and Chloe, faced some scrutiny, but they stood firm in their support. Their courage in a difficult situation further solidified our bond. The story forced Sterling and Finch to confront its own biases, to look inward at the culture it had fostered. It was a painful but necessary reckoning, a direct consequence of their actions. I knew that one story wouldn't dismantle an entire system, but it could certainly shake its foundations. And that, in itself, was a victory, a testament to the power of truth. The media chose my story, not because it was sensational, but because it was real, a microcosm of a larger struggle. And in telling it, I found my true purpose. The fallout from the media storm was significant. Mr. Harrison, the CEO, was eventually forced to resign, and the agency issued a public apology, acknowledging their failings and committing to comprehensive diversity and inclusion initiatives. I chose not to return to Sterling and Finch, despite their attempts to woo me back with promises of a promotion and a leadership role in their new D&I efforts. My trust had been broken, and my path was now clearer. The experience, while painful, had solidified my purpose. I realized my passion extended beyond creating ad campaigns. It was about advocating for equity and amplifying marginalized voices. I decided to start my own consulting firm, specializing in authentic brand storytelling and inclusive marketing strategies. My goal was to help companies genuinely connect with diverse audiences, not just superficially. My first clients were companies that reached out directly, inspired by my story and my commitment to ethical practices. They wanted to avoid the mistakes Sterling and Finch had made, seeking true partnership. Sophia and Natalie, my friends and mentors from the previous story, reached out with unwavering support and business advice. Their encouragement was invaluable as I navigated the complexities of entrepreneurship. My firm, Imani Collective, quickly gained traction. We focused on creating campaigns that celebrated authenticity and challenged stereotypes, proving that inclusive marketing was not just ethical but also highly effective. The journey was not without its challenges. Building a business from the ground up required immense dedication and resilience. But this time, I was building something truly mine, aligned with my values. I often spoke at industry conferences and universities, sharing my story and advocating for systemic change. I emphasized that diversity was not a quota to be met, but a fundamental strength to be embraced. The scars of the exclusion remained, a reminder of the injustice I had faced. But they were also a testament to my strength, a symbol of how I had transformed pain into purpose. I learned that while some battles are won, the larger war for equity is ongoing. Racism and discrimination are deeply embedded, and true change requires continuous effort, vigilance, and collective action. My ending wasn't a fairy tale where all prejudice vanished. It was realistic. I had faced a significant challenge, spoken my truth, and emerged stronger, more purposeful, and with a clearer understanding of my own power. I found peace in knowing that my voice had made a difference, that my experience could serve as a catalyst for others. My journey of empowerment was not just about me, it was about contributing to a more just world. I continue to advocate, to challenge, and to build. My story is a testament to resilience, a reminder that even in the face of blatant injustice, one person's voice can spark a movement. My life is authentically mine, shaped by both triumphs and tribulations. And every day I step forward with faith, knowing that my worth is inherent and my story truly is my own.